NFL Week 1 is here, baby! The Giants open their schedule against the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday at 1 p.m. at MetLife Stadium. This is your Week 1 Blue Rush preview show. Let's bring in our longtime Giants beat writer for the Post, and he's a Blue Rush OG, Paul Schwartz, because there's so much to cover. So much to talk about going into this game. Paul, we got Daniel Jones versus Sam Darnold. Brian Daboll calling plays against a Brian Flores-led defense. And can the Giants secondary hold up against Justin Jefferson? And for you all watching, make sure to stick around for the B block because we got longtime Giants guard Justin Pugh on. He's going straight off the couch and straight into the players' lounge to break this matchup and season down from a player's perspective. Days away from opening kickoff, Paul. Is the hair in the back of your neck, like, is it up? Is it up yet, Paul?
You know, I've been accused of having the hair in the front of my head up a little too much sometimes. You know what I mean? You know, no, look, I mean, here's what, look, I've been doing this a long time, and the day that the season starts, right, and I'm like sitting back in my chair and like, okay, whatever, I'm out. You know, I am out because that is, yes, it is no question. I'm not a player, you know, I'm not a coach, but there's no question the start of a season. Look, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. You know, it's the ultimate reality TV. You know, I do not know what's going to happen. I've written and written and written, and you've talked and talked and talked about it, and we've talked about it, and none of us know, right? We have ideas and thoughts and theories and, you know, pulling up stats and going through history books to try to figure it out and watching, you know, sitting in 95-degree weather in training camp, trying to watch and analyze. And the first 10 minutes, we don't know. It could be 10-0. It could be 20-0. It could be 0-0. We have no idea. So, you know, that is exciting. And I get excited for every opening day. Yes. And it is too much hype. We get it. It's too much hype for one game. But you know what? Let it begin. Let the hype begin. I mean, this is all, you know, we the draft, free agency, training camp, OTAs, all that stuff, bang, opening day. You know, how many times have I written? Giants will start their season September 8th at 1 a.m. at MetLife Stadium against the Vikings. I've written that a million times, and now it's almost here.
It's almost like we need our own Hard Knocks behind the scenes with the New York Post covering the New York Giants, because that within itself is reality TV. And we can get straight into these storylines and the offense in this A block heading into this game. Obviously a big one. You were there when Brian Daboll finally admitted to the world that he was going to be calling the plays. He's going up against a Brian Flores-led defense, who Brian Flores went into Minnesota last year and kind of turned that defense around. Took them to being a top 16 defense from whatever they were of the year before. Paul, it's like Brian Daboll versus Brian Flores. Daboll hasn't really shown much in terms of how he was going to attack defenses in the preseason. I mean, is there pressure? Is there more pressure on Brian Flores or Brian Daboll going into this game?
Hey, let's not forget, there's another Brian here. Well, not another Brian, Bill Belichick. I mean, don't forget, Brian Flores sued the league, and the Giants were in that lawsuit because he was a strong consideration to be the Giants head coach. Remember that misguided text between Bill Belichick and Brian Flores, congratulating him, thinking it was Brian Daboll. I mean, that was a big mess. So, you know, everyone will downplay that right now, but you don't think in the back of Brian Flores' mind, he's thinking, I'm going against the Giants right now, the team that, you know, left me at the altar for another Brian Daboll. Look, we all knew Brian Daboll was going to be calling the plays. There's no reason for him not to do it, you know, after doing an OTAs and all of training camp. I mean, unless he failed his own audition, which he was not going to. So it was wasn't even a badly kept secret. It wasn't even a secret. But I think it's a big deal. I think we've talked about this before. I think it's a big deal. And this is not like, you know, Mike Kafka, who did it the last 2 years, was inept and couldn't do it, because I don't think that was the case. Look, Brian Daboll doesn't want to have to call plays between what the offensive line turned into last year and having to sort between three quarterbacks, but he is an accomplished play caller in the league.
Yep.
Really, the only reason he is the Giants head coach is because he is so good at calling plays at most places in the NFL, at Alabama for 1 year where they won a national championship, with the Bills, with Josh Allen, and they did great things, and that's why he is the Giants head coach, because he showed such acumen doing that. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. The Giants now import one of the best play callers in the league. It was right that Daboll didn't do it for a couple of years. He needed to get his feet grounded and centered as being a head coach. He's never been a head coach. Those feet are grounded. Those feet are centered. He's lost a lot of weight, so he's a lot less, pressure on those feet. And that thing, he looks good. He feels good. And, him holding that thing over his head is completely natural to him. It's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how he calls a game. A lot of us got to go back to, 2021, I guess, was the last time he called it as an offensive coordinator. But you talk about taking over a Giants offense, as he knows, was one of the worst teams when it came to going 3 and out. Was one of the worst teams in third down percentage, red zone percentage, and points scored. When he was back with Josh Allen in 2020 and 2021, those last 2 years, the Bills had top 10 across the board. They were putting up points. They were electric to watch. So it's going to be it's going to be cool to watch, see how he goes through the flow of the game. We've seen him call plays down the field, call shots throughout the preseason in camp and in that Houston Texans game. But how is he going to manage? Game manage a Daniel Jones? How is he going to move the ball? What play calls is he going to have for the different weapons that he has lined up? And we talked about this before, Paul. It's kind of the same receivers group, but with Malik Nabers on the outside. And there's that viral clip of Malik in the locker room the other day with the scrum, you guys with him, and him saying that he wants to hear the crowd chant his name. Young fella, you were brought here for the crowd to chant your name. You make some plays, Paul, I guarantee you, Giants faithful are going to be going absolutely crazy with "We Want Leak" or "Leak," like however they do it. Those chants are going to come, and they're going to come early. But do you think there's too much hype on this kid going into week 1?
Well, yes and no. Look, he made it easy. Malik made it easy. He literally told the fans, I want you to chant "Leak," which is good, Malik, you can two-syllable it, right? But he has a big gold chain that says "Leak," right?
Yep.
His guys call him Leak. I don't call him Leak, but his guys call him Leak. So it's right there. It kind of, look, it's the Cruz is great. We know that. But he's not Victor Cruz. He's Malik. He's Leak.
And then there was Tomb.
Look, he doesn't have to worry about. They will chant his name. People are bubbling over with excitement and enthusiasm for this guy. Why not? He's look. Everyone thought the Giants did the right thing by drafting a left tackle, several years ago, and it was just a question of was Andrew Thomas the right one. But nobody's chanting for a left tackle. That's all there is to it. They're chanting for the quarterback and the receiver or the running back who are able to make plays because of the left tackle. So is there too much hype? Look, we'll talk about this, okay? Because you were a player, right? And you had a number, right? And I'm sure your number was important to you. I also realize you weren't a first-round draft pick, and so your number was kind of, as long as they gave you a jersey, I'm sure you were thrilled with what the number it was, right?
Yes,
sure,
sir.
As long as it wasn't X, right? Or 000. As long as it was a real number, you were thrilled. I get it. These numbers are important to them. Graham Gano is not giving up 9. That's the way the league is right now. Graham Gano is 37. He's not giving up 9. He's superstitious as well. So Malik, this whole thing with unretiring Ray Flaherty's number 1 jersey, I was originally stunned by this. Stunned. Unretiring a number, the Giants. Now, I understand Ray Flaherty played in the 20s and the 30s. I get it. And this is a nice homage almost for people who've never heard of Ray Flaherty. Now they've heard of Ray Flaherty, right? And look, Malik Nabers is respectful. He says the right things. He spoke to Ray Flaherty's son. John Marek had to get permission for his son. Look, if his son said, look, that's my dad's number, I think it's a disgrace to unretire it, then they wouldn't have done it. That's all. And they would have had to go to plan B, whatever the other number was. I get it. Single digits are important for these guys. And it is a nice gesture because now people will Ray Flaherty is kind of back in people's senses. That's nice. That's good. But that's a lot. I mean, we already have tremendous hype on this guy. We saw Hard Knocks where they were salivating over Nabers. Now, they were really salivating, let's face it. We can talk about this later in the podcast. They were really salivating about trading up to get a quarterback, right? But if they couldn't do that, Nabers was their guy. They got him. This is a lot. Now, you have a number that he likes. It is an unretired number. Look, things don't have to go great. Are we sure the Giants can hold up in pass protection? Are we sure that Daniel Jones can find him and get him the ball? This offense, as you mentioned, was just a horrid passing attack last year. So those things have to happen. Malik Nabers can't throw the ball to himself. Yeah. So it's a lot. The hype is great. The Post has bought into it. We had a big back page of our preview with Malik. You know what I mean? We're not running away from it either and saying, oh, let's hold off. I have a big story in, I talked to Darius Slayton. I talked to Amani Toomer, who happens to be the Giants, by far, career receiving leader. And he said, back in my day, they hated rookies. Dan Reeves hated rookies. They didn't want us on the field. They didn't trust us. Brian Daboll doesn't hate rookies and doesn't hate Malik Nabers. He will target him bang, bang, bang. Or you know what? The first play of the game is probably going to be a little quickie to Wandale or Malik Nabers. That's just the way it's going to be. Yep.
It has to, and that's because those are two guys where the offense has to run through those two guys. It has to run through a Darius Slayton, has to go through a Jalen Hyatt. I think we're going to see a kind of like a reversal when it comes to the identity of this Giants offense. Everyone remembers the days of the T Keys and the Brandon Jacobs and the Ahmad Bradshaws, and it's like run the ball. I think Brian Daboll's going to come out there slinging, and I think they're going to put it all on Daniel Jones. Look, Daniel, we've shored up the offensive line for you as much as possible as we can going into week one. We added Odell 2.0, as people call him. On the outside, you still has Mr. Faithful, Darius Slayton out there showing that he can still burn guys with speed. Jalen Hyatt. I'm anxious to see how they use Wandale Robinson on a more full-time basis, but it's right there for Daniel Jones. It's right there for Brian Daboll. What's that?
I get it, but you said slinging, right? I mean, you have to define slinging. What you say about Brian Flores, right? Cover zero, blitz zero, right? Yep. Blitz zero. I mean, the guy sends more pressure. He sends more guys than you can block, okay? So I don't think the recipe to do that right away is to come out slinging.
Oh, absolutely, Paul. You have to throw them out of cover zero.
Slinging, maybe quick. Get the ball out of Daniel Jones fast. I don't think that, when you say slinging, I'm thinking bang, down the field. That's not good. I don't think it's going to be. Look, that's what Daboll did with the Bills. Look, he brought motor, Devin Singletary, with him now, right?
Yep.
And he's a good, capable. He's a starting running back. He's not a star. He's not Saquon, but so I think they're going to use him. He can block, pass protect. But to me, slinging is John Elway, is Mahomes, is even Josh Allen slinging that ball down the field. And I don't think they're going to do that right away. I mean, look, if the opportunity is there, it's there. But look. They wanted to replace Daniel Jones, right? They don't have full trust in him. He's coming off an ACL. They want to take the quarterback and make him from here to here. Daniel Jones they want him to get the ball to the playmakers. Malik, get the ball in his hands, see what happens. Now, they'll take their shots, but they told you what they think of Daniel Jones. They're not sure about him. So the best way to do that is to get it out of his hands. If he has to run it, I think they're going to call fewer running plays designed to him. They want to keep him upright. They don't want him getting hurt and having to go to the backups. But I get it. Daboll is a throwing coordinator, but that doesn't mean, some of these passes are going to be like runs in some way, shape, or form. So, I get it. I mean, look, I saw you play slinging. That's what you want to do. You want to get down the field. I know that. I'm not talking to a linebacker here or an offensive lineman. I know you think slinging is the way to go, and it will be. Slinging, just not slinging.
Slinging is part of the quick game. Quick game is part of slinging because if you sling it, especially when you're talking about cover zero, Paul, you have to throw a team out of cover zero. You can't run the ball against them because what we call cover zero, uno más, one more. They have one more defender coming off that edge who the quarterback has to account for. So, one, Daniel Jones has to show how comfortable he is within this offense, which he should be, where he can identify that free rusher. Is that rusher coming from depth? Because now you got a little bit of extra time. The two guys can be picked up, but the one guy who you've got to account for, if he's coming from depth, you've got yourselves a little time. And what do we say all the time about, you know how I love the big possession receivers, the Isaiah Hodgins, the Allen Robinsons. There aren't any of those on this roster. They're the little shorter, catch the ball at 5 and go for 50 go catch it at 5 and go for 50 type receivers. So when we're talking about slinging it in the pass game, this is advantageous for the Giants offense and Daniel Jones going up against a team that blitzes so much, because if you get them in space, you get a catch in space where it's as a catchable ball for him to catch and run. Malik, leak. I'll yell it. I'm emceeing it. I'm him seeing it, Paul. I'll yell it over the daggone microphone because we want to see big plays, and that's why they gave up, or they allowed the Ray Flaherty's family to unretire that number, because they want the crowd to go leak. Just make sure he takes care of that family. Autographs, anything. Make sure he takes care of that family. Before we go into the B block, we were talking about the run game. We were talking about Motor Singletary. I think this game, Paul, I know Singletary is the guy because of familiarity, but Eric Gray showed enough. Tyrone Tracy Jr., what they were doing with him in terms of different packages and lining him up all in different spots and formations, I think he was doing enough to command not only some attempts, but some plays. So I see the first couple games of the season, especially this one against the Minnesota Vikings, as auditions for reps and rushing attempts. Motor Singletary he's the lead actor right now. But it's only a matter of time till Eric Gray busts open a 30, 40, 50-yard run, or Tyrone Tracy Jr. takes some sort of screen or lines up at the number 2, 3 receiver, catches some sort of pass, and Brian Daboll's like, I have something with this backfield. So I keep an eye on that. Who do you think comes out of this game with the most rushing attempts and most total production out of all 3 of these backs?
Well, I think it's Singletary. I really do, just because he's the starter. And, look, Daboll and Shane love him. They brought him in here. I do. But I don't disagree with what you're saying. Look, Tyrone Tracy is not your ordinary rookie. He played 6 years in college. He was a receiver for 4 years at Iowa. He's 25 years old. You've seen him, right, Brandon?
Yep.
He looks like a 25-year-old young man. He does not look like a 21-year-old rookie. His body is filled out. I think he's ready to roll. And he was a receiver, so I think they have no fear at all of throwing him the ball. He could be part of that quick game too, right? Bang, line him up, throw him the ball. He can catch it. He's a natural. The one thing we didn't mention is the offensive line. And in this, in this kind of pressure, you need guys. I asked Andrew Thomas Wednesday in the locker room, Greg Van Roten, and Jermaine Illuminor about what is the key, and they said communication. Look, if you get run over, you get run over. That's physical. Yep. But it's communication. And that was the worst part of this offensive line last year, right? They had guys who were young. Andrew Thomas got hurt in the opener. They had guards. They had a rookie who were new. They had a rookie center. The communication was all over the map, all over the map. So I think these guys will be able to communicate, even though they have not spent a long time this summer together. This week they are together. They had a bunch. John Michael Schmitz had some injuries. Some guys were knocked around a little bit. But I think they are in good shape. They're healthy and they're smart. Illuminor, John Runyon, and Greg Van Roten have 20 years of NFL experience, right? And they bring that all here. And I talked to, when I had that in New York Post on Thursday, that Illuminor and Van Roten played almost 800 snaps alongside each other on the right side of the Raiders' offensive line. So these guys are new to the Giants, but they're not new to each other, and that is huge. They know each other now. They know the terminology. They know the deal. So I'm feel better that this offensive line will be more prepared to deal with this pressure in game one, right? Game one, a lot of funky things happened, right? A lot, well, they didn't show that. We didn't think that was going to happen. I think they're better prepared to at least mentally deal with it because they've been there, done that in their NFL careers.
Well, I'm glad you got to talk to those three guys because I agree with you. All eyes are going to be on the chemistry and the communication of this new Giants offensive line going into week one. So, Paul, let's take these people into the trenches. We got longtime NFL guard and former Giant Justin Pugh hanging out with me in the Players Lounge. Straight into the Zoom room. I got my man Justin Pugh. Justin, what's going on, man? It's that time of the year, a couple days away from the opening kickoff of the season. Are you feeling that itch?
I'm excited. I'm excited to watch some football right now. I don't know if I'm ready to go out in the field and come straight off the couch again for next year. I was on Sirius XM this morning talking about a lot of matchups. I haven't been this excited for a season in a while. Sorry, I saw the camera drop out. I had to make sure I didn't lose you guys. But I am very excited for this season to kick off. Energy is in the air. We're starting with the AFC Championship rematch, going to see if the Chiefs can go for the three-peat, which is unheard of. And then we got this Brazil game, which is a little crazy. And then our Giants kicking off this thing Sunday with the Vikings. We got a lot on our slate for this weekend.
Are you down with the international games? Did you ever get a chance to play overseas anywhere?
Yeah, so we played at Twickenham back in 2016,
Yeah.
I think it was. And it was tough because you got to fly overseas. The sleep schedule gets all messed up. But what I will say is it's great for the game. The NFL is trying to grow the game internationally. So I know some of the Eagles players came out and they said the NFL said we can't leave the hotel, don't have our families come down. That gets a little nerve-wracking as a player, because you're sitting there trying to focus on a game and you're wondering your safety. So hopefully this Brazil thing gets ironed out. We can continue to go to places like South America, grow the game. I'm excited for a game to be in Ireland at some point. I was just over there on vacation and went to the British Open, the golf event. They have a rabid fan base. They love the NFL. So I think Ireland's the next one. And if they do, I'm going to be there in the stands cheering them on.
And I'll have a pint with you because I've been over to London 3 times with the Giants. I was at Twickenham with you guys, and then we're going back in Germany. I'll have a pint with you in Ireland at any time. We can have Pat McAfee out there with the sleeveless shirts as well. All 3 of us have sleeveless shirts.
Pack absolutely crushed it over there. That was a great game. Yeah, I'm down for that. I want to go to the Germany game if I can swing that this year, but we'll see. I got a 7-month-old, so it's not as easy to just hop on a plane to Germany.
All right. I got a 15-month-year-old. I know exactly how you feel, my man. And Germany, that's not till November. Let's talk about week one. Obviously, one of the biggest storylines going into this week one matchup against the Minnesota Vikings, Brian Daboll officially admitting to that he's calling the plays. You've been with this team. You were with them last year. Is that something that you kind of saw coming?
I'm not surprised by it. Now, look, Kafka's a great coach. He's had NFL coaching interviews every offseason. What I will say is in New York with the pressure of the media, and I'm looking at me a talking head right now, and I was a player last year. With that added pressure, I think Daboll's like, hey, I'm going out how I want to go out. So I'm going to go out there and I'm going to call these plays. I'm putting my game plan in, and I love to see that. Last year, Daboll came in and ran some of the offensive meetings. In my career, he probably is the best offensive coordinator in knowing what every single person's job is. Okay. He knows to the T what the offensive linemen need to do and what their responsibilities are. That's something that I really grew an appreciation for as he ran some of those meetings last year. And I think that will carry over into this season. But don't get it wrong. Don't get it twisted. Kafka's still an amazing coach. He's going to be involved in game planning. He's going to be coming up with a scheme. He just won't be calling the plays on Sundays, but still 2 very, very good coaches.
So go even deeper on what that interaction is going to be like with Kafka now. When you talk about him being, in the install meetings. Now, if you have let's say you guys in the offensive line have a huge, a question. Who do you go to in terms of the Kafka and the Daboll?
You're always going to your offensive line coach. Just like anything in life, things roll downhill. So I'm at the very bottom as a player, and I will go to my O-line coach and say, hey, how do we want to block this up? Because Kafka's not going to come in, and Daboll's not going to come in and say, hey, I want you stepping with a left foot on this protection. He's not going to get that nuance. He's going to be like, hey, I want you guys blocking the 4 down lineman and the Mike on this protection, or the middle linebacker. I want you guys to sell really hard run fakes in this protection because this is how it's going to set up the routes down the field. Think of a play caller as your signature. Everyone has, they know how to write in cursive. They know how to sign their name, but it's just a little bit different. It's a little bit unique to that person. So we will still see the same exact offense. We'll still see the same exact plays called. Just the style and the timing in which they're called will be different depending on, how Daboll is calling it for how Kafka called it last year.
All right, let's take this thing to the trenches, man. The Giants' revamped offensive line is something that everyone's been talking about. Giants fans' hands are shaking, and they're excited as well, man, because offensive line held up against the Texans in the preseason game. They held up against the Jets' defensive front in the joint practice out there in Florham Park. I want to get your thoughts on the Giants starting offensive line week 1 this year compared to last year. Last year, Andrew Thomas, Braden Sin, Glow, JMS, Evan Neal. This year, Andrew Thomas is back, John Runyon Jr., JMS, Van Roten, and Jermaine Illuminor. Which would you say is the better offensive line?
So I'll take us all the way back to last training camp. And I was just an innocent bystander at the time, just sitting at home on my couch, watching the news, reading Twitter or X or whatever we call it nowadays. Giants fans were very high on this offensive line going into last season. And all the way through the first drive against Dallas, I actually don't even go back even further. There was like a Lions joint practice where I vividly remember everyone talking about it. And then you go to the first drive of last year in the Dallas game, and there's a penalty, there's a snap, there's a blocked field goal, Andrew Thomas gets hurt. Everything, it's almost like that season was sucked out of, the air was sucked out of that building, and everything was like, oh, the sky is falling. It is so hard to play offensive line in New York because the expectations are Chris Snead, David Deal, David Boss. The list goes on and on of the names that have played and were so good for so long. Giants fans got spoiled for how great of an offensive line they had. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years go by, some big money was spent at some positions and didn't go exactly how they wanted it to. And last year, the expectations were just as high, and they didn't exceed. So what I would tell all the fans right now, don't get too high, don't get too low. If there's a bad game, we're going to fight back and we're going to respond. If there's a bad play, we're going to fight back and respond. To just say, hey, this is the savior, we have the offensive line figured out, and after one game bailing on the team or the offensive line in particular, that is not how you support your team. It is a very toxic environment at times on Twitter with how fan bases talk about the offensive line or talk about the quarterback play, which we're going to get into here shortly. These guys all can play football. Andrew Thomas, one of the best left tackles in football. John Runyon Jr. comes in, and we saw this in Hard Knocks. He can pass pro with the best of them. He is one of the best guards. He did it in Green Bay. He can play football at a very, very high level. JMS is the key to this entire thing. Him taking that second-year jump. He is a vocal leader on that offensive line. I was around him last year. Funny story, actually, when I first got there, I think JMS thought I was like a weight room intern or a coaching intern because I didn't look like I was the starting left tackle.
He was straight off the couch.
Man, make sure
straight off the couch.
Exactly. But he yelled at me. He's like, hey, make sure you're at meetings on time at 8 o'clock. And I laughed and I gave him a hard time because at that point I played like 10 years in the NFL and he didn't know. And we had that conversation. He was embarrassed after, and he gets real red in the face. But he ended up showing up like a minute late to like a meeting that was run for just the players. So he wasn't in trouble. But I got on him from that point forward. But he is a leader. He's vocal. He is going to lead this offensive line, I believe, this year. And another great signing, Greg Van Roten gets signed in training camp. He brings that veteran presence. He brings what I was last year. He started every game last year for the Raiders. He has the familiarity with Carm, the offensive line coach, Porcillo. And then you look at the right tackle position. Everybody has talked about it. Will Evan Neal be there? Will he be healthy? Clearly, the ankle was still not 100% coming into training camp, and Jermaine Illuminor went and took that position. He's played right tackle in the NFL successfully throughout his career. I'm glad we're taking the pressure off Evan Neal. He can come in and spot rotate because there will be an injury, and I think at some point you will see Evan Neal in the lineup, but he doesn't have that pressure initially to go out there and do it. So I spent a long time on this because I think about it all the time, what it takes to be an offensive lineman in New York City. I asked the fans, don't get too high, don't get too low. Support this group through the good and the bad because there is going to be more good this year than bad. Trust me on that.
Do you think they've had enough time to gel guys were going down and they were having to mix and match the matchups throughout training camp. Do you think they've had enough time together going into this week 1 matchup?
They haven't had enough time, but that doesn't mean that they aren't going to get better and better every single week. Right. That's what we want to see. We want to see that progression, because if you look at it, Jermaine or Luminor was playing left guard in OTAs. Runyon was playing right guard. Van Broten wasn't on the roster. We had, at right tackle, we were rotating guys in there. JMS gets hurt during training camp. They have not had enough time to gel. That does not mean this offensive line will not be good. It just means there are going to be some growing pains. They might struggle to pick up games early on. There might be some run blocking and they don't get up to the second level like just how they should. That is why I'm telling the fans, please trust me. Believe me on this. Offensive line get better as the game goes on. They get better as the season goes on. To continue to support this team through the good and the bad, I know it's tough to say, but having faith that this O-line is progressing. We have great depth. We get Josh Azudu back. He's healthy this year. We have Evan Neal. They're not pressured into the starting lineup. I truly believe the offensive line is trending in the right direction, and we're starting to develop an identity as an offense, and that will also progress through the year.
Okay, so with that said, what would be considered a good game for Daniel Jones, the offense, specifically the pass game?
Limiting turnovers. I think when we look at this game with the Minnesota Vikings, they are trying to find out who they are as well. They have questions at quarterback. They let Kirk walk. I think if you look at Daniel Jones and you look back, I'm going to go for like an entire season. If we can get Daniel Jones from the 2022 season when they went to the playoffs, that's like 3,000 plus yards. You have like 20 touchdowns. You have a good ratio of touchdowns to interceptions, taking care of the ball, using his legs to keep the defense guessing. A quarterback using his legs goes from 10 on 11 football, where the defense has an extra guy because they're not accounting for the quarterback to run, to having to play 11 on 11. So I would like to see Daniel Jones prove all the naysayers wrong. Hey, this ACL is feeling real good. Take off on the first time he gets to do a little read RPO action, a run pass option. Take off one time and let teams know, hey, I'm coming out here. I'm going to run the ball. I'm going to take care of it, because that's the one thing we saw in the preseason. In that Texans game, everyone got on Daniel Jones for the pick six. You can't have errors like that. I don't care about him throwing up a one-on-one ball to Jalen Hyatt, Malik Nabers, Darius Slayton. Like, give me those one-on-one shots all day long. Those are going to be – we need receivers to go make those plays. Don't make the critical mistakes that's going to put points on the board, because we're going to be relying on this defense this year. They carried us last year at points. We need to let them eat.
When you talk about the receivers making plays on the outside, I always tell people, like, when you play receiver, our job – the success of our job is determined by so much. Guys got to block, quarterbacks got to throw the ball. So when you see a guy like Malik Nabers added to the outside perimeter with a Jalen Hyatt, another speed guy like Darius Slayton, and a guy that can kind of utility guy that can do it all, and Wan'Dale Robinson, as an offensive lineman, what's your thought process, or what are you thinking, knowing that you guys have gotten stronger in terms of an offense has gotten stronger on the perimeter as well?
You love looking out there and seeing that alpha at wide receiver one. I played out here in Arizona with DeAndre Hopkins, and constantly teams had to roll covers to DeAndre, double cover him, because he can embarrass you at any given moment. So Malik will show flashes early. I'm sure that Stephon Gilmore will be following him around. He just got signed as the Vikings' first cornerback, or one of their cornerbacks. So I'm looking for Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson to have a big day. Primarily Wan'Dale Robinson in the slot, working on that nickel DB, being able to get open. He was so shifty and made so many explosive plays for us last year, and that was coming off the ACL. 18 months is really when you start feeling good from an ACL. How do I know? I'm 18 months out from tearing my ACL as well. Me and Wan'Dale were kind of in a similar boat. He is a guy that I'm going to highlight to have a big day in this game. And then another guy is Devin Singletary, a guy that not a lot of people, Daboll just came out and said he's a 3-down back, but he is a guy that I think will be a difference maker, because we have to get back to leaning on the run to set up the pass. Take pressure off Daniel Jones, take pressure off the offensive line, let Daniel Bellinger, 4th-round pick, Theo Johnson get in there and start throwing their big bodies around, and really start identifying who we want to be and how we're going to play this brand of physical football.
You mentioned that 2022 season where Daniel had that strong year that got him paid. Saquon had 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns that year. You think Singletary, Eric Gray, and Tyrone Tracy Jr., do you think they can supplement or come in and match that production?
That is a tough order to ask of those guys. And I think Devin Singletary mentioned this at some point throughout the offseason. He's not coming in trying to be Saquon Barkley because not many players in the NFL can be. Maybe a Christian McCaffrey or a Jonathan Taylor, but go in and just do your job. Get those gritty, those grimy yards. We've seen him run tough. He's handled the workhorse load when he was in Houston. You bring in Tyrone Tracy. Hopefully the ankle injury isn't lingering too much, and he can go out there and be that change of pace back. Eric Gray really showed flashes in preseason, had some big runs for touchdowns. So I'm really looking at it as a true committee. When I say committee, Tracy and Gray will be the change-ups. Devin Singletary is your workhorse back. You got to feed him the ball and let him get rolling a little bit, and that's something that I think you're not going to replace Saquon. I don't think those guys are going to, any of them singularly, are going to go out and put up Saquon numbers. But we saw in Hard Knocks again, Joe Shane said, Tim McDonald actually said this. He goes, what's our identity? Joe Shane didn't answer the question, but he told you what the identity is. We went out and drafted Malik Nabers. We got Darius Slayton. We drafted Jalen Hyatt last year. We got Wandale Robinson coming back. The Giants do want to throw the ball. They are showing us who their identity is. John Runyon's a great pass protector. Andrew Thomas, one of the best. So, we are going to sling the rock around, but you need to run the ball enough to keep the defense guessing, and that's where I want to make sure we don't get too far away from establishing the run early to open up the pass.
All right, let's Riverside it, but we're going to still stay in the trenches because this Giants defense is going to rely heavily on the pass rush. You got guys like Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns coming off the edge. You got Dexter Lawrence from the inside. How do you think they're going to match up against this Vikings offensive line, particularly the outside tackles with the Christian Darrisaw, who just got paid and is one of the elite in the league, and a Brian O'Neill?
I think this is a great matchup for both sides of the equation, and I'll tell you why in different areas. Christian Darrisaw is one of the ascending left tackles in football. There's a clip, you probably can go on Twitter and find it at any time. He tossed a defensive end out of the club. He has explosive hips. He is like a young Trent Williams, how he is ascending right now. That is a tall order for him and Brian Burns. That is a battle of titans. I'm excited to see this one because we invested heavily in Brian Burns. He has to go win that matchup. I don't need him winning all the time. I need Brian Burns giving us one sack at the end of the game to close it out because him and Darrisaw are going to have a battle. Tough matchup. Brian O'Neill, probably the second best offensive lineman on the Minnesota Vikings. He's going against Kayvon Thibodeau, who's another one of our premier pass rushers. That's another battle. I view the tackle matchups as if we can get one win and one sack from each of those guys, that's a huge win because both those offensive tackles are very, very good players. Where I see the Giants absolutely dominating this game is with Dexter Lawrence. There's nobody that can block him. I can name the best center in football, and Dexter Lawrence is going to feast all day long against that guy. He showed it the first time the Giants played the Vikings. He almost won that game single-handedly for the Giants with the push that he was able to get. I know the interior three offensive linemen for the Minnesota Vikings right now aren't sleeping very well. They're seeing the boogeyman, and the boogeyman is Dexter Lawrence, and that is a key matchup that I think the Giants have to exploit. He has to be a game wrecker. He has to get in the backfield, be disruptive, get Aaron Jones on the ground, and get in Sam Darnold's face.
Have to. Because there's still question marks within who's going to be the guy or the guys in that defensive secondary. You see they went out and signed Adoree Jackson straight off the couch. Two-part question. How long does it take a vet to get into game shape? Can you give Adoree some a little bit of pointers there? And then just thoughts on that secondary, man. Obviously, Tate Banks is CB1. But do you count on Adoree Jackson to come in week one, come in from, still working out with the trainer, but not being in football shape? Are you still counting on him to go out there and lock down a Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison? Like, what should the expectations be for this Giants secondary going into this week one matchup?
When I mention the offensive line and not getting too high or not getting too low, I'm taking that to the secondary as well. Everyone expects Adoree Jackson to come in and be like in midseason form, ready to play. I think they're going to roll him out there. I don't think you put him out there and expose him to the wolves and just say, hey, we need you to go lock up Jordan Addison. You know, we've been here for a week. That is a position where you could get a guy hurt. A guy could get injured. With the amount of running that he'll have to do, the stress that's going to be on his hamstrings, keep him fresh. I think that is where they're going to find success. You have guys that have played that position throughout training camp. Yes, do we think Adoree Jackson at his peak is better than those guys? That's why they went out and signed him. They obviously wanted to address that position. But we have enough guys that are going to have to step up until he can get there, until the reinforcements come. And that's where I think that cornerback 2 will be a little bit more of by committee. The real matchup is Tay Banks and Justin Jefferson, the best receiver in football. We're going to find out very, very early where Tay Banks is at in his progression. We need him to lock down one side of the field and allow us to really kind of do that cornerback by committee position. This also leans very heavily on the defensive line. That's where I think Dexter Lawrence can create so much havoc. He can help the secondary out. And that is something that I truly believe. If you have the D lineman that can roll in and create havoc, it helps everybody on the back end. And that's where I think the Giants can find an edge is in the middle with Dexter Lawrence.
Man, JP, I could talk football with you all day, my man. Tell the people they can find you.
Hey, we're on Twitter at Justin Pugh. I got a new show. I'm going to be traveling to every Thursday night football game. This week we're going to the Chiefs-Ravens to see that battle.
Hey.
I'll be at New York, so I encourage all the fans to reach out. When Dallas comes to town and is playing the Giants, I will be at MetLife with the fans. So we're going to do a little battle of New York. I'm going to go see the Giants and see how they tailgate and how they get down. And then I'm going to go see the Jets the following week, and we're going to have a little battle of the Meadowlands or MetLife on those times. So follow me on all those channels, and I'm always around.
And I got some tailgates for you, man. Come check out while you're out here. You know, I'm around the parking lot before the games and after I clock out of work to have a good time. So I definitely got some tailgates for you, man. Thanks for hopping on with us.
I appreciate it. Go Giants.
All right, let's get back to Blue Rush. Man, thank you, Pugh, for hanging out with us. Paul, what was your fondest memory of Justin Pugh in the locker room while he was on the team with the Giants while you were covering them?
Well, there were two iterations of Justin Pugh, right? He was the first-round draft pick and came in, and it was always, he had a corner locker. He was always a great guy. He had that Jersey, Philly kind of sensibility to him. He understood the market. He arrived when the team was in a down cycle. That's all there is to it. That offensive line, Chris Snee was there, then he got hurt. So the offensive line was in a down cycle. The team, the roster was in a down cycle. So it was rough. It was rough. And now, obviously, last year he comes back, right off the couch, as we know, played remarkably for someone who had not practiced and was, not 300 pounds they put him at what? They put him at left tackle, right, in the beginning, and that was shocking. And he good guy. He'll be very successful. Look, everything comes to an end, and I think he's a lot thinner now than he was, so he's not coming back to the NFL, I don't think, anytime soon. But good career, good guy. Did some good things in Arizona when he left the Giants, and made some good money, too.
Yeah, he did. All right, Paul, let's flip it over to the defensive side of the ball. We talked about this before we hit the record button. The Giants cannot let Sam Darnold come into MetLife Stadium and sling it. Thoughts on Sam Darnold, Paul?
Well, look, I mean, he's not a good NFL quarterback. He was, and Brian Daboll scouted him. They scouted all the quarterbacks. Joe Shane was on that staff in Buffalo, 2018, right? They luckily took the best of the bunch right now, which is Josh Allen, right? But that was not a great quarterback class. Everyone thought it was a great quarterback class. The Jets thought it was great because they took Darnold, number 3 in the draft, and that was not. That turned out to be a bad move. Greg Van Roten was a starting guard for the Jets in 2020. Okay, with Darnold, they went 2-10 with him as a starting quarterback. That was Andrew Gase. He was there. It was a mess. I think they were 0-10. Gase, fired himself as the play caller. And Van Roten said, "Look, I like Sam. He's a friend. I root for him. I hope he does well. I don't hope he does well this week against us." He said that was a tough situation for him. The team wasn't very good. The offensive, game planning was not great. And there is something to be said for putting guys in the right spot. You know, the Vikings did not intend for Sam Darnold to start, certainly not the whole season. That's why they drafted J.J. McCarthy. Everyone thinks with Kevin O'Connell, it is a very conducive atmosphere for a quarterback. And so McCarthy, everyone said that is a great landing spot for J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan, even though he might not have been ready to start right away. So he gets hurt. He has a torn meniscus. He's out for the whole year. All of a sudden, it's Sam Darnold. He's got a 21-35 record as a starter. He's got, his touchdowns, interceptions are bad. He hasn't really started in any way, shape, or form since 2021 was when he was benched from the Panthers. So, he's seen things, he's done things. I don't think he should be stunned by anything. But, he's a guy that I think new defense coordinator Shane Bowen needs to get after. He has happy feet at times. He's not a guy. Look, for years it was Kirk Cousins, and he was a tough customer. He's a tough customer. They had a high-powered passing attack, and they brought in Aaron Jones to run the ball, and they do have a great receiver in Justin Jefferson, and Addison is a really good receiver if he's healthy. But I don't think they want to be thrown at 40 times with Sam Darnold.
Here's what scares me most about Sam Darnold, Paul. The fact that he's part of this new class of first-round quarterbacks that didn't make it with one or two teams they were with and go out to another place, has some weapons put in place, and then comes back on the scene and wins like comeback player of the year, a la Geno Smith. And then you look at what Baker Mayfield was able to do down in Tampa Bay last year. Sam Darnold, the quarterback, as a weapon, I'm not worried about. But when you talk about having Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison on the outside, and we have question marks still on this defensive secondary, that's going to be dangerous. That is what I'm watching, Paul, and that I'm watching Justin Jefferson. I'm watching everything he does. When he goes against a water break, go ahead. You want to sign out? I'm watching this dude because who's going to line up on him, who's going to be over the top, and who's going to be kind of off to the side, that triangle to kind of have guys near Justin Jefferson at all times. They brought in Adoree Jackson. It's kind of similar to the Vikings bringing in Stephon Gilmore, but Stephon Gilmore has been there throughout the majority of training camp. Adoree Jackson, as he said to you guys, the media, he was out with his personal trainer working out, but ain't no shape like game shape, Paul. Do you feel comfortable with him lining up against a Justin Jefferson on 3rd and long, or do you feel comfortable with Nick McLeod, Cordell Flott? Like, who do you is there any Giants DB that when you look down and say, oh, he's up against Justin Jefferson, Giants defense has a chance?
Well, don't they have a number one, a first-round pick?
They have Tate Banks, but if you put I was thinking if you put Tate Banks on Jordan Addison, you can man that up. But if you put the CB2 on Justin Jefferson, you can take a safety and double him. And that just kind of makes it easier for you. I play Madden a lot, Paul. That's my schemes.
Yeah. Look. Adoree Jackson's not going to get 60 snaps here. You know what I mean? I mean, he can't. I mean, he can't. I mean, you said Justin Pugh was straight off the couch. Now, What is Adoree? Straight off the what? I mean, straight off the high school field, right?
United Airlines flight. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, he's a cornerback. Look, he's in shape. He's not in football shape. He hasn't tackled anybody. He hasn't taken a hit. No. I mean, I think he gets a uniform on game day, and maybe they put him in certain situations. You know what I mean? And you're right. They line him up and they put somebody over the top. You know what I mean? And he just kind of. But you don't need him. You don't need him pulling a calf or pulling a quad. I mean, it's playing cornerback. You can't simulate that on any way, shape, or form with your high school track coach. You just can't do that. One thing about Sam Darnold I forgot to mention earlier is that a lot of people I talked to said they think his year last year, not played one game with the 49ers with Shanahan, will help him. You know what I mean? Learning verbiage. Just Kyle Shanahan is a quarterback whisperer. Look what he's done with Brock Purdy. So just being in that environment should help him. And now, with the Vikings, with O'Connell, that should help him also. It's conducive to good quarterback play. Yep. That should help him. But no, the defensive backfield is still the biggest question mark. Cordell Flott and Nick McLeod are question marks. Jason Pinnock is not a question mark, but he's not a bell cow back there. Is it Tyler Nubin? Is it Dane Belton? Dane Belton, was on the injury report with a back. I think Tyler Nubin's going to be a really good player, but he's a rookie. he's a rookie. So, rookies, mistakes happen. Pass rush better be good. And, they just can't have busts. They did a great job against them 2 years ago in the playoffs, but, on Jefferson, right? They did a great job on him. Everything underneath. I think the Giants will take that. And that, this is the first game for Shane Bowen, too. And I think Shane Bowen is perfectly willing to have Jefferson catch the ball. Look, on 3rd and 8, you don't want him catching the ball for 11 every play. But live for another down, live for another down, live for another down. And if we have to make him kick a field goal, kick a field goal. I think that's not what Wink Martindale wanted to do last year. I think that will be more accepted this year.
This is going to be Shane Bowen's opening act as the Giants defense coordinator. We talk about the question marks in the secondary, but you think that his focus should be stopping the run versus Aaron Jones. And I agree with you. So would you say that the real pressure is not on the Giants defensive line, who we know and we love, not on the secondary, but on the linebackers and stopping the Vikings run game?
Well, Bobby Okereke is, if he stays healthy, he's going to have 120 something or more tackles. We know what he's done. Now Mike McFadden had a really good year last year, and I'd be bullish on him starting alongside him. But he's been out a lot of the summer. He's got a groin injury now. He is practicing. I mean, I would think having him start will be a rush job a little bit. He's been out. He's been out with other injuries. I think he had a hamstring earlier in camp. So he just hasn't, you don't want to force a guy in, have him play 25 snaps and re-injure something. And now he's out for another month. So that position is definitely in flux. Does Isaiah Simmons, who really is not what we think of as a run stopper, right? He's more of, he's on the depth chart as a middle inside linebacker and as a nickel back. He's a safety. He's got all sorts of things behind his name. So, he's on the team, so there are packages for him. And I don't think we can just discount the defensive line either as saying, we know that we're going to get the job done. Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau are edge rushers. But in this game, they're going to need to be more than that. They're going to need to, seal off the edge. They're going to need to make tackles. Dexter Lawrence is a beast. We don't even have to talk much about what he can do in the run game. We know what he can do. But yeah, I mean, one of the things when Wink Martindale left, was ugly exit, is that Brian Daboll, for the next defensive coordinator, he wanted someone who was more concentrated on stopping the run, because the Giants just were not good at that the last 2 years, and they were terrible at that last year. So someone who is more emphasizing stopping the run. Shane Bowen at Tennessee the last 3 years definitely is that kind of coordinator. So we'll see. Look, we want Burns and we want Kayvon to go after the passer. That's the sexy stuff. But they, it needs to be a full defense. And I think the defense has the potential to be pretty good as long as they don't give up big plays.
Yeah, they got to stop that run, Paul, especially because you got Sam Darnold in there. You want him to throw 35, 40-plus times a game. You don't want them to be able to be running the ball 25, almost 30 times a game, getting 3, 4, 5 yards a pop on first down. You want that 2nd and 8 because that's more of a passing down, and you can do more. Now you add Brian Burns, Kayvon, Dexter Lawrence to the mix when you have passing situations. So it's on Okereke, whoever lines up next to him at linebacker. They got to get in there, fill the holes, and get some stops, some TFLs behind the line to put Sam Darnold in a position to throw the ball. And I read somewhere to where the Vikings offensive coaches have been going back to tape on Tennessee's defense from 2 joint practices between the Vikings and Titans last season or last preseason to try and get some sort of clue on how Shane Bowen is going to run that defense. All right, Paul, we're going to wrap this thing up. Your final point, PFP, Paul's final point. Give it to us.
My final point is 1-0. You know what I mean? 1-0 versus 0-1. What happened in Brian Daboll's debut, right? His first game ever as a head coach. They come out, they're playing Shane Bowen's Tennessee Titans, right? In Tennessee, it is a very difficult assignment. It's a game just about everyone said that's going to be 0-1. They're losing the game. They come back. They score. Instead of kicking an extra point to tie it, he has a great play set up. Saquon dives into the end zone. They take the lead on a 2-point conversion. They get lucky on a missed field goal, right? And they win the game by 1 point in Daboll's first ever game as a head coach, and it's like he showed some guts and they got some fortune, and that carried over for the whole first half of the season, right? What were they, 7-1, 7-2?
Yep.
Carried right over. We flip over to last year. Giants are excited, right? They won a playoff game against the Vikings. They got killed by the Eagles, but there's a lot of enthusiasm at this time last year for what the Giants are going to do. They get smoked 40-0 by the Cowboys, right? So 0-1 versus 1-0 is huge. It does not define a season. It does not. We always, all of us, guilty as charged, put too much emphasis on the first game. But for this team, young team, this is the fourth youngest team in the league, Brandon, okay? And and as far as starting lineups, it is the second youngest starting lineup in the league. So they need good things to happen early. Yeah. This is a 1 o'clock home game against an opponent with Sam Darnold playing quarterback. It's a game that, it's a very even point spread. It's a game they need to win. 1-0 versus 0-1 will be huge for this team.
Absolutely, especially when you're talking about all the young guys playing. How do you get young guys in the NFL to walk around with their chest poked out? You get dubs. They got to feel it. They got to feel dubs and get some dubs early. We're going to wrap this thing up now, Paul. Thank you guys for watching the Blue Rush Preview Show. And make sure you keep an eye out on the New York Post Sports social accounts on where and how to watch the post-game show after the game. We're going to have more players, more celebs, more finalists joining the show throughout the season, so be sure to stay locked in. Special thanks to Justin Pugh for the insight, and we all can't wait to see him back in East Rutherford at some point this season. Man's going to be shooting some great content. For Paul Schwartz, I'm Brendan London. Thanks for watching.